Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, November 10th. I'm your host, Tom Moore. The Michigan State game is tomorrow. The game against Michigan in 15 days. We are welcoming back our good buddy Ross Fulton of Buckeye Huddle. He is our X's and O's guru, and whenever Ross is on, that means we are sponsored by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Learn more, check out the delicious-looking menu, and even make a reservation at jeffruby.com/Columbus. So we're going to be talking about something else that looked pretty good last weekend. That was the Ohio State defense against Rutgers. It was not perfect, but it was pretty darn good. Ross, let's start with the safeties. This is how many times have we used the phrase safety-driven defense over the last couple of years with Jim Knowles. What was Ohio State doing with their safeties to really take advantage and get the better of Rutgers for long stretches of that game on Saturday?
Yeah, one thing we've talked about in the past, and Coach Koo, K-O-U, which is another good ex-follow, had a discussion about this the other day. Jim Knowles likes to spill the football by pinching down his defensive ends. We've talked about that in the context of pass rush or lack thereof and other areas. But interestingly, against Rutgers, they largely did not do that. Instead, Knowles kept the defensive end wide. My speculation is that's because that was his way of containing the quarterback read aspect of Rutgers' offense. As a result, to fill that extra gap, he used the safeties quite a bit. So we saw a lot of cover four, probably more so than I've seen in a long time out of Ohio State, and certainly since Knowles has been here, that allowed, as we'll show, one of the safeties to come down. Or in the other instance, which we'll show next, he would use a safety run blitz to fill the backside C gap. And so it was a lot of, instead of using the defensive ends to spill the football, it was a lot of boxing it inside and using the safeties to account for an extra gap. So two distinct things here. So the first one we're going to show is not, it's not a blitz. In fact, it's just they're playing cover four. Josh Proctor here is the weak side safety. And when he sees run action, he comes down aggressively and fills the B gap and closes it down. So it makes a tackle in the backfield. So aggressively, it almost looks like a blitz, but it's just a nice read by him in play. And so again, this is the way that they're reequating numbers in the run game against obviously Rutgers being a run heavy team that involves the quarterback. The second one is in fact a B gap blitz. Now, Knowles is like this throughout the year. We've seen it with Latham Ransom a few times. We showed it last week against Wisconsin, and here it's obviously Sonny Styles filling in for Ransom. But this is they're playing cover one behind it, so they're showing split safeties again, but then rolling down at the snap, bringing that extra defender on a blitz. Styles made some nice plays doing this. He had this tackle in the backfield. They were doing it to defend the run to get a eighth body and to gap out. But he also, when Rutgers passed, made several plays off of it, most notably forcing the quarterback to rush the ball, which led to the Jordan Hancock interception return for a touchdown, also caused a sack. So they use this quite a bit. And again, we've seen this concept in the past with this season with Knowles liking to bring the boundary safety. And obviously with Styles there, it fits his skill set to get him down near the line of scrimmage. So, as I said earlier, I think part of it was trying to contain the quarterback and have someone to account for him. I do also wonder, though, if part of it is, trying to maximize the guys he has available. And obviously a lot of injuries, particularly in the secondary. And, if Sonny Styles is going to play boundary safety going forward, he is someone who is, admittedly likes being closer to the line of scrimmage. And that's what he's been repping at nickel a lot this year. In some ways, it almost fits him more to be at boundary safety than nickel because you can get him in the run fit easier. We've talked about that in the past. So the boundary safety for Knowles can tend to be pretty run focused, particularly depending on what the opponent's doing. And so, but they're obviously trying to maximize that with the number of times they brought him on that B gap blitz.
And in case you're wondering why that would be that Sonny Styles is over at that boundary safety spot now, that is the spot where Latham Ransom had been playing Ransom has missed. He got hurt during the Wisconsin game. Missed last week. His status for this week, we will find out. Did not sound from interviews on Wednesday like that was a super imminent return. So you may get a little more of an extended run for Sonny Styles at the Bandit position. We will all find out on Saturday during the pregame availability report when that comes out a couple hours before kickoff. All right. So we talk all the time about the defense and offense being a little bit of a cat and mouse game. So Ohio State does what they're doing. Everything's working great. Rutgers has a chance to respond. And next two plays, Ross is going to be running us through sort of some of the things that Rutgers did in a response to what Ohio State was doing. And Ross, run us through these next two because, they did have some success after some initial struggles.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is, Ohio State, as you said, like Rutgers had basically no offense in the first quarter. And then the defense obviously down some guys, have some other injuries people were playing through. Started getting put in some bad spots. So I did promise that we talk about the fumble Ruski. So, the one thing you can say about that, obviously every team, it's a smart play call by Rutgers. Like we've talked a lot about for the Ohio State offense, sneaking it. Like anything else, you can't be predictable all the time. So you do have to have a counter to your sneak. So it's a nice counter to the sneak. Obviously, like Cody Simon pinched down and tried to stop the quarterback when he has contained. Davidson Igbinosun played a great play getting back to make the tackle because that was a 4-point play, getting him on the ground. Like obviously Ohio State's goal line defense continues to be really stellar. Between that and then, you get the fake punt that wasn't supposed to be a fake punt, and then you get an interception, and all of a sudden you're like back on the field a lot. Then even the pick six, you're going right back on defense again. So it wasn't exactly like the greatest management of the defensive situation. But Rutgers did, finally getting to my point, did do a couple things eventually that caused some stress. So the first one is running the quarterback on designed runs. And so especially what they like to do. So this is pop out. So we talked about for Ohio State with Devin Brown. So pop out, you're basically faking like it's a zone read, but really it's just a lead play. Then the running back leads to the backside for the quarterback. And so you're just getting a lead blocker on essentially outside zone. But what Rutgers did was they ran it to the boundary away from their bunch formation several times. So we've talked about like, why do teams run to the boundary? Well, here's a good example because Ohio State just doesn't have numbers to the short side of the field. Like most college defenses, they like to set the nickel to the field. So you have an extra force defender to that side, especially when you have bunch, you're going to have multiple bodies covering up those receivers. And so they're just outnumbered. Eventually they sort of started to, Rutgers went to the well probably one too many times with pop out. And Ohio State sort of started recognizing it and slowing it down. But, they hit a few just outnumbering Ohio State. The second thing, the big issue that popped up for Ohio State was handling split zone or duo with a split action. The split zone is like not a new concept, right? Like Ohio State runs it all the time. I'm not quite sure what the issue was, but like when you have split zone, the concept is that the linebackers are supposed to fall back because you're now like creating a new gap, right? Like you did have a tight end on one side, he blocks back. So where you had 4 gaps to one side, now you have 4 gaps to the other side. So the term is like the linebackers fall back. So they just basically move a gap over with the tight end, but they weren't doing that. And so you can see that on this play, like they're not gapped out because there's now an extra gap being created. And we'll talk about why, there seems to just be some confusion handling here, or like, is the defensive end spilling or boxing? It's unclear. Like, is he supposed to force the football outside, or is he supposed to keep it contained? Styles is coming down as the boundary safety, but like, where is he fitting on this? I just don't know. I don't know if like they were prepared for Rutgers to run this, or by doing what they were doing by using more of a boxing technique with the safety coming down. That's just like not what they normally do. And so it caused some confusion. But now, like, to segue, like as the game went on, they got sort of more and more comfortable running cover 4 and having the safety come down, like they did get better against it. So that's, we can discuss why that happened.
Yeah. All right. So we did the punch, we did the counter punch. Now we're going to do the counter punch. And, this was impressive for Ohio State to adjust like that because they were doing this without Josh Proctor. They obviously were missing Lathan Ransom, who had been playing the bandit position, the boundary safety. And then they lost Josh Proctor on that pick 6 play. He was down on the field for a little while and then missed the rest of the game. So then you're doing it without your deep safety, your adjuster safety. And, they did not completely fall apart. And that's, obviously a good sign for what has been a pretty good defense this year. So what did Ohio State do to counter? And then, how did that impact things as well when Malik Hartford came on and had to play after not playing a whole heck of a lot the last couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, you can only, take so many people out, right? Like Lathan Ransom, like it's a loss, but like you can kind of manage it because Sonny Styles has played a bunch. They're increasingly showing that they're comfortable just keeping Jordan Hancock full time at nickel, including against the run. Like you take Josh Proctor out, people forget like they already lost Jahad Carter for this. He has not been available. So you're really down a lot of safeties, and it did limit what they could do. So like, those first 2 clips we showed of like one was Proctor coming down. They pretty much stopped doing that. It was pretty much always Sonny Styles coming down either on a safety blitz or being the cover 4 defender. They tried to keep Hartford as the deep safety. And so they were pretty vanilla in what they could do. But like they did increasingly like even play more and more cover 4. And as the game went on, they did get better at it. So like in this example, you see the safeties like another split zone, but they're doing a much better job closing it down, both from the defensive end side of it, and then the safeties are triggering more aggressively and coming downhill. So, again, it was, I think, probably in some extent like different concepts from them, take some reps. Rutgers wasn't using split zone initially, so that I do think it was something that like, Rutgers coaching staff noticed. And it took a little bit of time to adjust. And then I do think they were getting worn down a little bit, just given the circumstances we talked about. But I do think like, especially once the offense started, answering and scoring points, like I think they kind of settled in against the run and had some good reps from cover 4, like this one.
All right. And then the last thing we want to touch on was one of the areas where they maybe were a little bit more vulnerable against the pass, especially with the young true freshman Malik Hartford in there at that deep safety spot. How did you see that shaken out? I mean, it doesn't seem like that's going to be a long-term thing with Josh Proctor from all available indications. So this might not be a long-term concern, but when Hartford was in there, how was Rutgers able to kind of maybe take advantage of that a little bit?
Yeah, I actually thought kind of as much as like any kind of giving up some runs, I thought like Rutgers really had success moving the ball when they could hit some pass plays. And, Ohio State had a couple of penalties on the one drive too, that obviously extended that one, but they were hurting Ohio State in the slot, especially. They caught them also on some stuff out of the backfield, but you kept seeing Jordan Hancock. He was playing with outside leverage like he does here. And there was a few times he did that and like the inside help was not there. Whether that was because of like a over focus on the run from the linebackers or, again, you're playing a deep safety who doesn't have a lot of experience and is a true freshman. And so like, that's kind of evident here, right? Cause like Hancock, yes, he's in man, but it's kind of a loose outside man. He's expecting help and the deep safety help is late. And then they both miss the tackle, which, that's a little thing, but like they just haven't been doing that this year. So you kind of take it for granted that, unlike previous seasons, you're not seeing a 15-yard gain turn into a 35-yard gain, which makes a difference. So I guess like pretty obvious. We talked about this with the offense as well. Like you lose multiple starters, like it is going to impact your performance. So yes, as I said, like I think they can get by. It's certainly not ideal if Lathan Ransom can't come back, but like don't want to also add to that Denzel Burke and Josh Proctor and Tommy Eichenberg as well. Like that would start being a very significant thing because, you still see from the other linebackers, like some holes, right? So like, steel chambers like doesn't always trigger correctly. See that on some of like those run plays, or like Cody Simon in the passing game can, kind of get stuck in a spot and not adjust to routes. So when the two of them can rotate together, you're kind of can hopefully get the best of both worlds from each Chambers and Simon and minimize their weaknesses. But like, if you had to put the two of them together without Eichenberg, and obviously Eichenberg's leader of the defense, and they need Eichenberg, they need Proctor, they need Burke. Maybe not this week, but certainly going forward. But as you said, the good news is it seems optimistic on those three.
Yeah, so we'll be keeping an eye on those injuries and the this weekend's game against Michigan State at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Lots of coverage of the team, lots of coverage of recruiting. It's another big recruiting weekend. Mark Giffler keeping an eye on all of that. Lots of coverage of the X's and O's with Mikey and Devin and Ross. Sorry, Mickey, not Mikey. Mickey and Devin and Ross, making you a smarter football fan. Lots of coverage of all the stuff going on at Michigan. Oh boy, has there been a lot of coverage of that at BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. So we'll continue to keep an eye on all of that as news continues to develop there. Thanks again to our good friends from Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Visit jeffruby.com/Columbus to learn more and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.